film we are discussing today has a significant background. Director Scott Derrickson previously directed Doctor Strange. Every frame is stunning. Screenwriter Zach Dean showcased his deep expertise in science fiction with The Tomorrow War. His control over the pacing of the plot is top-notch. Twists come one after another. It's hard to guess what will happen in the next second. Today's sci-fi thriller, The Gorge, is the latest work from these two powerful figures. This mysterious gorge, which rarely sees the light all year round, exudes an elusive aura. For some unknown reason, it requires the top agents of two countries as well as elite Marine Corps snipers to guard it together. As for the secrets hidden within the gorge, no one knows to this day. However, the strange howls that often emanate from the gorge make the guards keenly aware that some shocking secret hidden at the bottom of the gorge. Behind that thick, inky miasma, what kind of unknown world lies there, and can they prevent the impending disaster? All of this must begin a few days ago. Anya, as Lithuania's top agent after successfully completing another assassination mission, was assigned by the organization to a valley. In the following days, she would carry out a secret guarding mission in a watchtower. The object of her watch was the entrance to this valley. Upon hearing this arrangement, Anya was filled with confusion. After all, no matter how one looked at it, this place didn't seem like a location where anyone would come. Meanwhile, former elite Marine sniper Mike was urgently recalled 4 years after his retirement. At this time, a female officer had been waiting for him. After briefly inquiring about Mike's basic situation, she arranged a plane to take him to an uninhabited area. After parachuting from high altitude, Mike landed in a lush river valley. Then he climbed over mountains and crossed obstacles, finally reaching the mission area. Unexpectedly, it was also this gorge that was shrouded in mist year-round. Mike then met with the former guard, Dre. Dre introduced him to the relevant situation of the area. However, Dre seemed to know little about this place as well. Dre took Mike to a watchtower. He informed Mike that this was the resting place for the guards. Everything was available inside, but there was a lack of communication equipment. It turned out that during their watch, they were not allowed to have any contact with the outside world. At this moment, Mike noticed that there was also a watchtower standing across the gorge. Dre answered his questions, saying that there were also guards stationed in that tower. However, according to the rules, both sides were prohibited from having private contact. But when he learned that the entire gorge was filled with landmines and deadly strategic obstacles, this regulation didn't seem so important anymore. After all, they couldn't even reach the opposite side. Although Dre spoke lightly about it, Mike still felt uneasy looking at the various weapons in the gorge. He couldn't help but ask what was inside the gorge. Dre surprisingly told him that the gorge was the gateway to hell, and they were the guardians of the gate to hell. Mike found it hard to believe after hearing this, but Dre's expression was extremely serious. He then explained that their task wasn't as Mike had guessed, to guard the gorge entrance and prevent others from entering, but rather to ensure that what was inside the gorge wouldn't escape. Mike instinctively felt he was talking nonsense. However, at this moment, a strange howl suddenly came from the gorge. Dre said that this was the sound made by what he had just mentioned, but no one knows what it actually looks like to this day. Long ago, the guards called it the Hollow Man. This name has been used ever since. It is said that in the late 1840s, a rumor spread. The International League sent 2,400 cavalrymen at that time. With the determination to kill those monsters, they entered that mysterious and unfathomable gorge. But the final outcome was shocking. Not a single person made it out alive from the gorge. After this battle, the International League had to change their strategy from active offense to passive defense. They set up a tight defensive line within the gorge to stop the monsters known as the Hollow Men, to prevent them from having a chance to leave the gorge. After Mike heard about this history, he felt a deep sense of unease. Night fell. Mike lay in bed, the words Dre had said during the day echoing in his mind. After pondering for a long time, he took out his notebook and carefully documented his feelings from that day. Then he moved the machine gun to an easily reachable position. Only then did he gradually fall asleep. Mike was unaware that fate would change the next morning. Dre took the helicopter out of the gorge as planned. However, after verifying his identity, the personnel who came to pick him up mercilessly killed him. Then they let his body fall into the abyss. It turned out this was the International League's unique way of handing over. On the other side, Mike began his days of solitary guard duty. He carefully patrolled every corner of the valley and sent radio reports at scheduled times to update the outside world on the situation within the gorge. But aside from these routine matters, his life was truly boring. Mike could only pass the time by reviewing the materials left by his predecessors. During this seemingly ordinary process of browsing, he discovered some messages carved into the wall behind the bookshelf. Curious, Mike leaned in to read them. He found that most of these words were inspiring, which brought a bit of comfort to his heart. That was suffering and loneliness. Days passed like this, monotonous and dull, until one night a spark of curiosity arose in Mike's heart. He picked up his binoculars and looked across. To his surprise, he found that the guard in the East Tower was a woman, and she was exceptionally beautiful. Meanwhile, Anya also had a very keen perception. She instantly sensed that someone was watching her. So Anya extinguished the candlelight in an attempt to hide her presence, but she didn't realize that even so, it couldn't stop the different feelings stirring in Mike's heart. After that, it seemed that a tacit understanding developed between them. Their relationship began to change as well. Every day, they silently watched each other through their binoculars. Finally, one day, Anya could no longer contain her inner impulse. She pulled the trigger towards the sky. The crisp gunshot shattered the silence of the night. The gunshot successfully caught Mike's attention. He quickly raised his binoculars to look across. Anya was holding up a handwritten sign. It was clear that she wanted to communicate with him, but surprisingly, Mike hesitated at this moment. He remembered the rule that prohibited communication between both parties. Mike gestured to Anya to abide by the rules. However, Anya wasn't someone who would be constrained by rules. She directly picked up her sniper rifle and aimed at the cup in Mike's room, firing a shot. With a loud bang, the cup shattered. This ignited the previously quiet night. The atmosphere became heated. Mike was not about to back down. He immediately fired back. It was as if a competition had begun between the two. At this moment, Anya's expression suddenly became serious. She urgently gestured to Mike and indicated for him to look down into the gorge. Mike didn't dare to be careless and focused on looking down. At first, due to the dim light, he didn't notice anything unusual. But Anya, with her keen observation skills, caught a faint movement through her binoculars. It felt as if there were vague figures moving. After hearing Anya's prompt, he sensed that something was wrong. Mike quickly grabbed his rifle nearby and pressed his eye against the scope. He focused intently on what lay below. This time, he finally saw the situation in the gorge. Some bizarre, unknown objects were climbing up the cliff with a strange and rapid motion. They even had human faces. Their twisted features looked particularly horrifying in the dark. Mike didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. The bullet flew accurately toward the target. Not only did it hit those unknown objects, but it also accidentally triggered the explosives that had been planted below. In an instant, a powerful shockwave surged forward. Mike instinctively stepped back and tried to evade the oncoming impact. But to his horror, the unknown creatures in the gorge seemed endless, surging up in wave after wave. Seeing the urgent situation, Anya quickly sprang into action. She swiftly set up her machine gun and opened fire on the strange creatures that kept coming. Mike snapped back to reality and continued shooting. With their tacit coordination, they temporarily repelled the monsters with their fierce firepower. The surroundings fell silent once more. The intense battle just now felt like a fleeting dream. At this moment, a phrase Dre had once said flashed through Mike's mind. He instantly realized that these strange-looking and behaving creatures were most likely the legendary Hollow Men. Just then, Anya sensed something unusual again. She felt a faint sound coming from beneath her feet. A sense of foreboding instantly enveloped her heart. Her heart raced, and she dared not breathe. Anya looked down carefully, which startled her. A Hollow Man had already climbed up to the watchtower. The creature's face was grotesquely ugly. It was distorted beyond recognition. It had strange animal horns on its head. Its appearance was truly terrifying. Anya's breathing became rapid in an instant. However, she quickly steadied her nerves and pulled out a handgun from her waist, shooting at the Hollow Man. With her desperate counterattack, the creature was finally repelled. However, the crisis wasn't over. There were still many Hollow Men climbing up beneath the tower. Anya dared not hesitate and fired her gun. Meanwhile, Mike was also providing fire support. But unexpectedly, the falling Hollow Man collided with explosives while rolling down. A loud explosion echoed. Anya was hit in the shoulder by flying shrapnel. Mike quickly set up the machine gun. He opened fire on the Hollow Men across the gorge. The dense hail of bullets swept across like a torrential storm. On the other side, Anya quickly got up from the ground. Despite the pain in her shoulder, she gritted her teeth and endured it. Anya kept shooting at those monsters with the gun in her hand. She showed no intention of retreating. In an instant, countless bullets wove through the gorge. It seemed to form a deadly web of firepower. The monsters attempting to climb up the cliff would be hit by this web of firepower as soon as they appeared. Just then, a Hollow Man accidentally touched the warning line. In an instant, the Gatling guns set up around seemed to awaken. They all started operating. The firepower instantly surged to its peak. Wherever the bullets went, there was fire and smoke. Not sure how long it had been. The flames and smoke in the gorge gradually dissipated. Only then did Mike see Anya on the opposite side again. Anya also noticed Mike's gaze directed at her. Then she lifted the whiteboard used for communication, with a sentence written on it indicating that this was the most wonderful birthday of her life. After Mike saw what was on the whiteboard, a smile finally spread across his face. Thus, this thrilling battle was temporarily over. The gorge returned to a momentary calm. As dawn broke the darkness, the next day arrived. Mike began the tense repair work. After all, he didn't want to experience those strange creatures again. Just as Mike was relaying explosives on the cliff, an unexpected event occurred. A peculiar flying device rose up from deep within the gorge. It then hovered in front of him. High above, Anya immediately raised her gun and entered a state of alert. Immediately after, the nearby Gatling gun also locked onto the target. But strangely, the next moment, it inexplicably lowered its gun. And that suspicious flying device, just as Mike turned around, it quickly flew away. What was going on? And what did the appearance of this flying device signify? Was it the dawn before the light, or a disaster sweeping in once more? Time quickly moved to December local time. The weather began to grow colder. During this time, Mike continued to patrol the mountain on schedule and reported relevant information in a timely manner. However, due to Anya's presence, his originally dull duty job had become seemingly interesting. The two maintained a state of communication from afar every day. They conveyed their thoughts and emotions through gestures and signs. Even on days when snowflakes fell, they would build snowmen next to each other, as if they were accompanying each other. However, on a day in February, Anya's mood turned very gloomy. She sadly raised a sign, expressing her sorrow to Mike. After Mike read the words on the sign, he felt restless for a long time. So the next day, Mike took a rocket from the storage. He then proceeded to make simple modifications with skilled techniques. Then he pushed a bundle of rope outside. Anya was also bored on the watchtower. She kept watching Mike's actions until she saw him set up the rocket launcher with the rope. Only then did she understand his intention. A glimmer of surprise and anticipation flashed in her eyes. Mike firmly pulled the trigger. The rocket, accompanied by a sharp whistling sound, flew straight across the wide gorge. It accurately reached the opposite side. Anya immediately ran down from the watchtower and used a fire extinguisher to put out the burning branches, while securing the rope to a sturdy tree. When she returned to the watchtower again and looked across with her binoculars, Mike was holding a wooden board with an invitation to dinner on it. Anya's heart raced. She took a deep breath and didn't refuse. After completing his daily routine, Mike made a special effort to groom himself at his residence. He looked refreshed and energetic. Then he went to his carefully tended garden and picked a few bouquets of flowers he had planted himself. Filled with anticipation, Mike slid across the rope towards the opposite side of the gorge. But the gorge was very wide. Mike stopped halfway down due to lack of power. He looked down. Strange howls echoed from the fog-covered valley. Mike felt a surge of anxiety. He hurriedly grabbed the rope with both hands and exerted all his strength to climb towards the opposite side. After much effort, he finally reached the other side safely. The two finally met. Anya's face instantly lit up with a radiant smile. She invited Mike to have dinner together. The two sat on the watchtower, sipping wine and chatting happily, enjoying this rare gathering time to the fullest. However, until nightfall, Mike didn't leave Anya's watchtower. In this romantic atmosphere, they danced together. Everything felt so beautiful and natural. The subsequent events happened naturally. After confessing their love, they lay on the couch, gazing at the starry sky. The brilliant Orion constellation came into view. A deep longing filled Anya's eyes. She remembered her father saying that if she missed him, she could look at Orion. Her father would turn into stars to accompany her. The next day, parting was inevitable. Though reluctant, Mike walked towards the rope to slide back to the opposite side. Unexpectedly, halfway through, a sudden change occurred. Strange movements came from below the gorge. It turned out that a hollow man climbing up had triggered the cliff bomb. With a loud bang, the rope snapped. Mike's body fell into the deep abyss. Anya witnessed this scene unfold. She didn't have time to think and rushed back to put on her parachute. Then Anya jumped into the gorge without hesitation. The valley's fog strangely turned from white to yellow. Before long, Anya fell into the rushing river. After a struggle, she cut the parachute cords and used a branch to climb up to the shore. On the other side, Mike was hanging upside down in a tree, unconscious. In his daze, he felt something approaching. When he opened his eyes, a giant centipede-like creature was crawling toward him. He was terrified, his heart racing. Mike hurriedly grabbed his weapon and shot, After repelling the creature, he fell to the ground. However, Mike accidentally smashed a strange object below him. Then he got stuck in something like glue. Fangs emerged around him, seemingly about to close in. Fortunately, Anya arrived just in time. She shot and shattered the fangs. This helped him cut off the mucus and escape. After temporary safety, the two decided to cross the fog and search for an escape zip line on the eastern cliff. But just a few steps in, the atmosphere around them became eerie and sinister. They gripped their weapons tightly, scanning the fog. At this moment, a knight-like figure charged out of the mist. Anya was caught off guard and was knocked down. Mike was also knocked away. The rider, looking strange, was indeed a hollow man. The two could only fight back desperately. This hollow man rode a hollow horse at an extremely fast speed, and it had a very powerful attack. Fortunately, both of them were battle-hardened. Anya quickly adjusted her stance. She shot dead the hollow man attacking her. Mike also seized the opportunity to knock down the hollow horse. He crushed the hollow man, who lost its mount, but the knife-wielding hollow man took the chance to escape. Mike suddenly realized that the creature seemed to possess some intellect. He looked at the corpse of the hollow man and noticed it was wearing a uniform from the 1840s. He couldn't help but think of the 2,400 cavalrymen who had disappeared in the gorge. Mike wondered why their uniforms were still visible today. What secret could be hidden behind this? The two continued forward with their doubts. The scene before them grew increasingly horrifying. Everywhere were trees, twisted from white bones. Their grotesque forms sent chills down their spines. They walked another distance and arrived at a construction area. The ground was covered in cracks. Vines winding like poisonous snakes covered the buildings. Terrifying howls echoed all around. They hurriedly sought refuge in an abandoned church, but the scene inside the church was even more horrifying. Human skeletons lay on every bench. Mike approached to examine and found they had died from cyanide poisoning. This made him fall into deep thought. Anya was looking around the church. Just as she looked up, a spider-like creature suddenly pounced on her. Then a swarm of head spiders rushed in and launched an attack on the two. Just as the two were about to leave through the front door, a large group of hollow men surged in from outside the church. The situation became increasingly critical. This sudden turn of events made it difficult for the two to resist for a moment. At a critical moment, Anya pulled explosives from her backpack. With a loud bang, once the smoke cleared, an escape route appeared before them. The two didn't dare to hesitate and ran out of the church. They had temporarily escaped disaster. However, before they could catch their breath, the strange howls around them grew more intense. With no other choice, they hid in the gorge tunnel and blocked the entrance with debris. Holding their breath, they groped deeper inside and followed the stairs down to the basement level. The sight before them left them frozen in place. The room was filled with strange vines that twisted like demon tentacles. Deformed human remains scattered across the floor. The broken bones were uneven and emitted a nauseating stench of decay. The two forced themselves to search through the ruins. At this moment, Anya found an old videotape. Her intuition told her it held a secret. Mike quickly rummaged through the debris and found a working generator. After connecting the wires, the tape began to play slowly. The black and white images flickered. A long-buried truth surfaced. It turned out that in the later stages of World War II, the International League secretly developed biological missiles. This gorge was a secret base, but an 8.1 magnitude earthquake destroyed everything. The biological weapons were leaked. Biological genes fused wildly. Infected individuals chose to stay in the gorge and fend for themselves to prevent the spread of toxic gas. Upon learning the truth, Anya and Mike felt complicated emotions. However, the urgent task was to escape. Soon, they found an old computer in another room. After turning it on, an even bigger secret revealed itself. It turned out that after the earthquake occurred, the Black Fox paramilitary organization took over here. This organization not only didn't destroy the gorge, but continued to develop biological weapons and collect samples of mutated organisms. They aimed to create super soldiers for warfare. Mike opened a file named Stray Dog. It was actually the gorge's self-destruct program. Once the area was exposed, it would activate automatically. At that time, it would blow up the gorge, and the safe zone was 2 kilometers away. Without hesitation, the two immediately returned to the exit. Before leaving, they looked at each other affectionately and made a promise to escape together. But when they reached the door, they found the backpack was gone. Mike realized that these hollow men might possess intelligence. He pushed open the door and saw the backpack in a clearing, but there was no movement around. This was clearly a trap. Anya threw a smoke bomb. They quickly moved toward the backpack through the smoke. Just as Anya grabbed the bag, a lasso flew out of the darkness and wrapped around her calf. She was pulled into the depths of the fog. Mike immediately chased after her. Anya desperately struggled, trying to cut the rope with her knife, but she couldn't muster the strength due to being dragged. At this moment, a strange, hollow man on horseback turned to look back. Anya raised her gun to shoot, but the bumps made it hard to aim. In her panic, she crashed into a tree root and fainted. Mike followed the trail to the biological weapon pit. The air was thick with a pungent miasma, but thinking of Anya's uncertain fate, he rushed down without hesitation. At this moment, Anya was hanging in midair. She was frantically twisting her body to break free. A menacing hollow man approached. Anya seized the moment and kicked hard at him. Taking advantage of its retreat, she broke free and jumped to the ground. The monster, enraged, drew its knife and began slashing wildly. In the critical moment, she grabbed a nearby torch and threw it at the hollow man. At this moment, Mike was attracted by the intense fighting sound and hurriedly rushed over. He raised his gun and fired. The ugly creature fell dead. After confirming Anya was safe, Mike's gaze fell on the clothing of the hollow man. When he saw the identification on the uniform, Mike felt a shock in his heart. It turned out this was the first guard Shaw. The term hollow man originated from him. The continuous bizarre events hung over Mike like a shadow. It intensified his feelings of unease. He desperately yearned to return to the watchtower. However, it wasn't long before the scene before them shocked them. The earthquake had damaged the biological missiles. Toxic substances leaked out. The surrounding creatures had all mutated. At this moment, these mutated creatures seemed to be connected by some force. They emitted a strange glow. Though their forms were distorted, one could still vaguely make out human shapes. They let out deep guttural growls. The sound seemed to strike deep into the soul, as if expressing endless pain. The two dared not make a sound. They carefully navigated through the area. Every step was taken with extreme caution. They were about to reach the staircase. Just then, Anya suddenly felt something under her foot. Before she could react, the mutated creatures were instantly awakened. Countless vines quickly extended from all directions, instantly entangling Anya, who was trying to escape. Fortunately, Mike reacted quickly. He swiftly drew Shaw's military knife and forcefully cut through the vines. But the crisis wasn't over. The tentacle-like vines seemed impossible to kill. They came at them in wave after wave. The two were about to fall into a desperate situation. Anya made a quick decision and detonated an explosive. After enduring numerous hardships, they finally climbed back to the surface from that dark place. A warehouse came into view not far away. They remembered that this used to be a military base. A glimmer of hope ignited in their hearts. They walked into the warehouse. Sure enough, inside the warehouse, they found a military vehicle from World War II. Mike immediately set to work repairing the vehicle. Once the vehicle was repaired, they didn't dare to delay and quickly drove towards the cliff. The chance for escape was within reach. Anya and Mike would never give up easily. The two cooperated seamlessly and alternated to cover up. They faced the approaching hollow men without fear. Soon they shot them all down. Then, Anya started the vehicle. The car climbed up along the steel cable. Just as the two let out a slight sigh of relief, a sudden change occurred. More and more hollow men desperately climbed up from the bottom of the gorge. In the blink of an eye, they were closing in. Mike didn't hesitate to draw Shaw's knife again. He fiercely stabbed at the hollow man beneath him. Anya quickly reacted and joined the fight immediately. Just then, a hollow man suddenly attacked from the side. Mike couldn't dodge in time and stumbled. Fortunately, he grabbed the railing on the vehicle in time. This steadied him. In this moment, Mike thought of a way to escape. He quickly stabbed the fuel tank. Gasoline spilled out instantly and flowed down the steel cable. Then Mike quickly climbed back into the vehicle. He ignited a flare and threw it down. As the vehicle teetered on the edge, the two took out their tools and cut the steel cable. The vehicle lost support and plummeted rapidly. In the violent explosion, they successfully escaped from the terrifying creatures, and finally escaped from this abyss, which they called Hell. After many trials and tribulations, Anya and Mike finally returned to the surface from underground. The gorge before them was silent. The ruins and scorched earth told of endless disasters. The two gazed at it all. They knew well that the gorge harbored deadly secrets. Any moment could trigger an even greater crisis. They repeatedly considered and decided to blow up the gorge. Then they would flee far away. After Mike returned to the watchtower, he reported the situation to his superiors as usual. This time, the response he received was no longer mechanical and cold. Instead, a higher-up personally asked him if he had entered the depths of the gorge. Mike was shocked internally but remained calm on the surface. He firmly denied it. The higher-up's tone was cold and bluntly stated that the computer system under the gorge had started. If it wasn't him, then it must be the people at the opposite watchtower. The higher-ups immediately ordered him to execute the guard on the other side. Mike knew that refusing would bring trouble. He had to pretend to agree readily. In reality, he was secretly pondering how to respond, but he didn't know the higher-ups had already grasped their movements through cameras. This conversation was merely a test of him. Thus, his betrayal was already confirmed. The higher-ups decided to personally kill them. The next morning, Mike and Anya began to act separately. Just as the two couldn't hold back their feelings any longer, a helicopter suddenly roared overhead in the valley. Mike looked up. The black fox emblem on the fuselage was particularly glaring. He immediately realized that danger was imminent. Mike shouted to Anya to run. On the other side, the higher-ups had already arrived at the watchtower. He discovered that Mike was nowhere to be found. In his high position, he was instantly furious and dispatched well-equipped drones to search the valley. They quickly located Mike fleeing through the dense forest. At a critical moment, Mike skillfully shot down one of the drones. Anya dodged nimbly and shot down two more. The two quickly ran to the mountaintop. They set up their sniper rifles, aiming at the satellite launchers on the cliff. The two had already laid down the lines in advance. As long as they detonated one, it would trigger a chain explosion. This would completely bury the danger. With a deafening explosion, all the satellite launchers in the gorge were destroyed. Immediately, a piercing alarm sounded from the watchtower. The gorge was exposed on satellite imagery. The self-destruct program was then activated. Anya and Mike hurriedly ran towards the safe zone. The higher-ups also hurriedly boarded the helicopter in panic. However, it was already too late. The violent explosion created a powerful shockwave. The helicopter trying to take off was hit by this force. The fuselage lost control instantly and crashed into the cliff. With a loud bang, the helicopter violently collided with the cliff. It instantly erupted into flames. Anya reacted quickly and, at the moment of the explosion, tried her best to escape towards a safe area, only then successfully avoiding the disaster. But Mike was not so lucky. His previous leg injury made it difficult for him to move. Under the tremendous shockwave of the explosion, he couldn't evacuate quickly at all. In the end, Mike was swept into the water by the blast wave. After the explosion subsided, Anya waited in the mountains day after day. She always gazed towards the direction of the valley. However, time passed day by day, but Mike was completely unresponsive. With no other choice, Anya had to go to West Island according to their previous agreement. She hoped for the day she would reunite with her lover. 2 months flew by quickly. Anya walked toward the dining table with a tray as usual. Just as she looked up, she froze in place. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. The figure she had longed for was quietly sitting there. It was Mike, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. Anya's eyes instantly filled with tears. She stared blankly at her beloved. Thus, the film comes to an end. This film, released for Valentine's Day 2025, features the majestic scenery of the Grand Gorge in 4K resolution. Combining drone footage with real scenes, it creates a visual spectacle of both oppression and solitude. The monster designs and crystal attack scenes in dark caves showcase the production team's investment in special effects. The performance of the female lead, Anya Taylor-Joy, is one of the highlights of the film. She blends the agent's coldness with emotional vulnerability, especially in her struggle with the metaphor of marriage, giving depth to her character. The male lead, Miles Teller, interprets the loneliness and humor of a sniper through body language. Their chemistry injects vitality into the plot. The film attempts to explore the brilliance of humanity in dire situations. Through character collaboration and self-redemption, it suggests that love can overcome evil forces. Its strengths lie in the performances of the actors, the scene design, and the pacing of the action sequences. As an entertainment choice for the Valentine's Day period, it still offers ample sensory enjoyment. Friends who are interested can check out the original film, The Gorge. If you enjoy my channel, please click to subscribe to my channel.